What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I got another really awesome video for you guys. Today we're talking about the DJI Inspire 2 with the zenmuse X7 camera. So if you guys know this channel, you guys know I absolutely love the Inspire 2 and I already made a few videos about it, but I was able to get my hands on the Inspire 2 with the X7 camera yet again for about a week, and I had a ton of fun gathering a bunch of really awesome footage around the Bay Area with the Inspire 2, as well as a bunch of really awesome B-roll of me flying it, setting it up. So I really want to make a video about my honest opinions about what I think about the drone in 2024. This video is not going to be about boring specs, boring numbers. This is all going to be about my real world honest opinion about this drone as a Part 107 drone pilot based in the Bay Area. So if you guys are interested, stay tuned for this video and let's get into it. Alright guys, so with all my videos, I always like to first take a step back, look at the big picture, and explain to you guys why I'm making this video and kind of the context as to why I got this drone. You know, did I pay for it? What am I doing with it? Why am I flying it? So basically, the long story short is I do not own the DJI Inspire 2. I have a few colleagues in the Bay Area that do own it, so whenever I have a job that requests it, I can actually just rent it from them or borrow it from them. So basically, one of these producers I work with, she hit me up for this political campaign, and they were looking for Inspire 2 drone shots in Stockton. And at first I suggested, oh yeah, let's just use Mavic 3 Pro, you know, it's easier for me, quality's great. But what I've realized is a lot of like really high-end productions, like when they're doing serious stuff, filming with Alexas, Airy cameras, like they actually really care about that image quality. So for this particular production, they really wanted an Inspire 2. They didn't necessarily really care if it was the X5S camera or the X7. I happened to be able to rent the X7, so that was fine for them. And I had my friend who has a full Inspire 2 kit with the X7. He had 7 pairs of batteries. He had 3 different lenses. He had the whole dual operator setup. So it's a really good kit. And since he's a friend of mine, he actually gave it to me at a really good deal. And I was able to have the drone on me for about a whole week, which is absolutely awesome because you guys know me. I always love to be testing it, always practicing. And that's really important when you're flying a drone that you're not necessarily that familiar with. It's really important to spend those days up to the shoot, really dialing in your setup, making sure you test out all of its quirks, make sure there's no problems. So when you arrive on the day of the shoot, everything's all dialed in. So that's exactly what I did. I had the drone for about 5 days before the shoot, and legit almost every single day, every single sunset, I went out with my buddies and we just went and shot around the Bay Area. I went to Grizzly Peak, I went to the Berkeley Pier, I went to the Bay Bridge. I went to so many different spots. Like I flew it so many times, and with each flight, I gained more confidence. I learned more about the quirks of the drone, and I just felt like it really helped me dial in and really build up my confidence as a pilot. And that's the first thing I want to talk about is I strongly believe that flying the DJI Inspire 2 in dual operator setup in particular really helps you grow as a professional remote pilot in command drone operator. I mean, I feel like when you're just flying small drones, be it FPV, Mavic 3s, Minis, Air 3s, like you're really always just in your own world and you're relatively just doing like simple shoots because it's just you, the controller, and the Mavic 3, and you're just flying around this little tiny drone. Super easy to get shots. I mean, the shots from it are really amazing for what it is, and it's super convenient, and that definitely has all of its pros. But I feel like when you fly an Inspire setup as a dual operator, even a triple operator, someone could pull focus, it really helps you grow as a remote pilot in command, because I feel like as you grow up the ladder of a remote pilot in command, I feel like the more professional jobs you do, like you really have to work on your leadership skills, and that's kind of why people are hiring you. Like obviously people are hiring you to fly the drone, get awesome shots, but as I mentioned, like the higher up you go, the more professional shoots, like narrative shoots, really expensive commercial shoots, feature film shoots, like they're not just hiring you simply for your stick skills. Like they're hiring you to plan these cinematic shots. They're hiring you as the leader of the drone team, and it's up to you to plan this mission, direct your crew to accomplish and plan out flight lines, and to give commands to your gimbal operator, to communicate with the director of photography, to communicate with the director, the producer, whoever is there on set. And I feel like flying Inspire 2 really helps you grow those skills, because when you fly the Inspire 2, it's no easy feat. You know, you have to show up at a site, you have to find the best launching spot, you have to set up the whole drone, you have to set up the gimbal, you have to kind of communicate with your operator what kind of shots you want to get, especially when you're in the air. It's really important that you maintain that communication. And when you're flying as a dual operator, like it's just such a cool connection, because I know many of you guys are just flying Mavics and that's great, but like when you're flying a Mavic, it's just all you're just thinking to yourself, okay, I'm gonna get this shot. But when you're doing dual operator setup, you really have to be in communication. You have to explicitly tell your operator, like, okay, I'm gonna fly straight, you pan right. I'm gonna go to the right, you pan left. Like, it's relatively simple, but the communication is extremely important, especially when you want to be in sync, because it's really important that the two operators, the drone pilot and the gimbal operator, are in sync to accomplish very smooth and stable shots. And it's relatively easy, you know, like the more you do it, it just becomes more intuitive. You know, like I'll go down, I'll just say, oh, pan up as I go down. Okay, I'm gonna fly to the left, you pan right. It's relatively simple, but definitely takes practice. And I strongly believe it really helps you level up as a remote pilot in command Part 107 operator. So I think that's a really important thing to note when dealing with the Inspire platform, the Inspire 2 platform, and dual operator setup. Another thing I learned this past week flying the Inspire 2, and I've always known this because I've always been really excited to fly the Inspire because it's just such an awesome drone with a really amazing camera. But the more I fly the Inspire platform, the more I realize like how much it excites me as a drone pilot. Like, I know many of you guys might be dealing with this, but you know, especially in your hometown, like unless you're traveling, like after a while, flying the Mavic 3, Air 3 gets kind of boring, you know? Like even if you have a Mavic 3 Pro with those 3 lenses, like, you know, after going to always the same spots, the same parks, you know, just the same spots in the Bay Area, it gets kind of boring because the image just kind of looks the same. You know, sure, you can get great shots, but just like flying it by yourself, you know, just with the same 3 lenses all the time and just like the same sensor look, that DJI D-Log, the 10-bit, I mean, it's great, you know, but like, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like after a while, it just gets kind of boring. And that's why I do kind of like FPV, because you can kind of fly around, you feel like a bird, but honestly, even FPV after a while, it gets kind of boring, you know, just putting on like a GoPro Hero 11, Hero 12, like, I don't know, like unless I'm getting paid for like kind of cool shoots and doing cool sports and tracking cool subjects with the smaller drones, like it does kind of feel boring after a while. But what's interesting about the Inspire 2 is that since the camera is so amazing and since you can do that dual operator setup, like I find myself feeling really inspired, you know, no pun intended, but like I think they chose a really good name for that drone because like even though it's like a 6-7-year-old drone, like flying that thing is really fun. Like I've taken it to all the same spots I have with the Mavic 3, but just bringing that big drone with the X7 camera, throwing the 50mm on there, throwing the 24mm on there, doing dual operator, like it's just a whole different experience. And it's just so much fun to be able to just capture such amazing footage in ProRes 444 XQ or ProRes 422 HQ, like doesn't matter, but image just looks so much better, has so much more dynamic range. We're gonna talk about the image more later in the next section, but just overall, just the feeling of flying such a nice big drone, super advanced with a dual operator setup, amazing camera, interchangeable lenses, like just the idea of that, the concept, really makes me feel excited and really pushes me to travel around the Bay Area and find new spots and capture new shots and try to really experiment and try to improve myself as a dual operator setup and as an Inspire pilot. So I think that's another really cool thing about the Inspire platform. Like it really makes you excited about drones again, and it really forces you to level up and really kind of keep going up that ladder of becoming a better drone pilot. Because if you just keep sticking with the Mavic 3 Pros, the mini drones, I feel like you're kind of going to be capped at the kind of shots you're going to get and the kind of productions you're going to get hired on. So that's why the Inspire platform has been so great for me, and it's been so exciting and so fun, most importantly. All right, so another point I kind of want to tack on to that last point is the fact that since the Inspire is such a much bigger, much more professional and much more serious and awesome drone, I feel like after each session, like after each spot I go to, like once I get all my shots, you know, sun goes down, I'm all good, I pack up the drone, I go home, like I feel really accomplished. And I know you can get that feeling on a Mavic 3, you know, after you get a really awesome shooting at sunset, it feels great, but there's something about flying Inspire 2 with your friends at sunset, huge drone, you know, launching at a park, you know, it's like, there's something really satisfying about that, like completing a mission, you know, because inherently it's just much more riskier because like it's just such a bigger drone, it attracts more attention, it's way more expensive if you lose it, the stakes are way higher, the images you're getting are way better, you're getting way more data literally, but there's just something about the thought of like accomplishing like a bunch of missions it really helps me feel satisfied and helps me honestly feel like I leveled up after each flight. Like legit, after I'm driving home after a spot with my friends, like I feel just so accomplished. Like I'm like, hell yeah, I just flew like 7 packs today, 7 batteries on the Inspire 2. I didn't crash, got amazing shots. Like it really just helps you build up that confidence, and it just feels so satisfying. Like I don't get that same feeling when I'm flying on the Mavic 3, you know, like when I'm doing Mavic 3 shots, like I'm just so used to it. It's so small, it's so easy. Like I just feel like I'm not being challenged, and I feel like that's a huge point here, because to grow as a pilot, it's really important to challenge yourself and do things that are more difficult in order to grow. And for me, that's been flying Inspire, because it's just such a bigger setup, bigger drone. But yeah, that's basically all I can say about that. It just feels so satisfying and just so rewarding after each flight, being able to just come home, charge my batteries, look at the footage, going to sleep, and just knowing like, holy crap, like I just killed it today. I got some amazing shots. I went to like 3 or 4 different locations, didn't crash, flew absolutely amazingly, directed my crew well, everything went well. It's just such a great feeling as a drone pilot. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're flying the Inspire 2 system. All right guys, so the last point I wanna make about this whole kind of honest opinions category is the fact that it's kind of interesting. Like this past week, I brought the Mavic 3 Pro with me, along with me on all the Inspire shoots, because I really want to compare the footage and show you guys what the true differences are between the Mavic 3 and the Inspire 2 X7 sensor. But it was kind of interesting because after I did the flights with the Inspire 2, the whole dual operator setup, all that good stuff, and after that, once I packed up the Inspire and flied the Mavic 3, it's kind of crazy because after flying such a big drone, like flying the Mavic 3 legit feels like a mini. Like it feels like it's nothing, and it's crazy because after flying such an expensive drone, your heart's beating, you really don't want to crash, you're looking out for seagulls. Switching from that huge drone to the Mavic 3, which is still kind of a big drone to some people, like it felt so easy, and it really kind of built up my confidence to the Mavic 3. Like it really transfers over. Like it was crazy because flying the Inspire 2 is kind of scary, you know, especially in the Bay Area. There's a lot of seagulls, so the whole time my heart's beating, I'm looking out for birds, I'm just making sure the battery's good, my connection's good, just monitoring the drone. But then go to the Mavic 3, like I wasn't really worried at all, because the Mavic 3 has those obstacle avoidance sensor, has better obstacle avoidance, it has the cool vision assist. It's just such a smaller drone, it's way less expensive. So like when I was flying that Mavic 3, I was legit just ripping that thing around and just getting really great shots, because the whole time flying the Inspire 2, although it's a great drone, there are a lot of limitations, especially when you're flying it. You know, like I'm keeping in mind my connection. I don't want to go too far. I always want to see the drone because I don't want to get a bird strike. But then once you fly the Mavic 3, all those limitations go out the window and you could just really let loose. So although obviously the Mavic 3 doesn't have as good of image quality, you can't do dual operator, there's something really cool about switching from Inspire to Mavic 3. Like it really transfers over and it really helps you get awesome shots on the Mavic 3. Like although the Inspire 2 image quality is way better and I maybe got better shots with Inspire 2, like some may argue that the Mavic 3 shots are better because I was able to go a lot farther and I have that extra lens, that 7x lens, and I was able to just get even more creative after those Inspire shots, because with the Mavic 3, I was just limitless and I was just going crazy, just flying around wherever the hell I want and flying out of my visual line of sight and just getting really crazy shots. So you guys are gonna see those, but yeah, that's another really interesting thing that I found after testing the Inspire 2 and the Mavic 3 this past week. All right guys, so now that we talked all about my honest opinions, my real world experience about the drone, next we're going to talk about some more kind of technical information about the features, the codecs, the software of the drone. I know this is going to be a little bit dense, but I think it's going to be very interesting for you guys, especially if you guys are drone nerds and you guys like cameras. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the zenmuse X7 camera. And you guys know me, when I'm comparing drones, when I'm talking about drones, I really like to focus on the camera itself, because in the end, like, well, I'm not really just trying to fly around for fun and just kind of dilly-dallying in the air. Like my main purpose up there is to get shots. I'm an aerial cinematographer, that's my main job, and that's my main passion. I really want to get better at that. So that's why I really like flying the X7 camera. And I know it's big, it's more expensive, but when you go back and offload that footage onto your computer, like it's legit like a night and day difference. Like I know on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all those social media platforms, it's gonna compress the footage quite a bit. So you might not be able to tell that much on social media, especially a phone screen. But when I bring it onto my Mac Studio, bring it up in DaVinci Resolve, like the image just looks way better. Like the image just looks so much more rich. The dynamic range is way better and it just feels like a cinema camera. And that's like a huge difference, because the Inspire 2 is so cool because it's like you're literally controlling this flying cinema camera. Like there's no limitations. Like when you're flying the Mavic 3, the Air 3, those smaller drones, like the sensors are so small and it really gives off that kind of GoPro, that iPhone 15 look. You know, it's still, iPhone 15 is still great, you know, but you don't really get that depth, that richness that the X7 zenmuse cameras offer, you know? Like, I'm not really a colorist by any means, but when I go into DaVinci Resolve and do my color grade, like the image just retains way more information and it has way more latitude and flexibility on the zenmuse X7. Like sure, Mavic 3, you can kind of push it around a little bit, add LUTs on it and stuff, but just like the raw image of each, like I think it's a huge night and day difference. Like the zenmuse X7 just looks way more textured, way more cinematic, has really good highlight roll off, really good dynamic range, really great colors. Whereas the Mavic 3, sure, the image is still there, still looks like the same scene you captured, but it just has that kind of grainy look, not in a good way, kind of like that cell phone GoPro grainy look, and just doesn't have that depth and richness of colors. And I know it's a little bit hard to explain, but I'm sure you guys can see in the YouTube video. Hope you guys can tell the difference between them, because personally I can tell a huge difference. And so not only is there a huge difference just by looking with your eyes between the two drones, the Mavic 3 Pro and the Inspire 2 zenmuse X7, the zenmuse X7 Inspire 2 offers just a lot more professional recording options, and the software is just much more dense on what you could do and customize. The Mavic 3 Pro just uses the regular consumer DJI Fly app, which is really dumbed down. It's very simple. I'm not complaining. I think it's a great app, but it's very simple. There's not too many options. Whereas the Inspire 2 uses the Go4 app. It's a relatively older app. It's not really updated anymore, but it's kind of old, but I really do like all the options. For example, I can record in Cinema DNG RAW. I can record in ProRes RAW. I can record in ProRes 4444 XQ. I can do ProRes 422 HQ. And you can record to the SSD and also the SD card at the same time. You actually have to. And yeah, there's just so many different options. Whereas on the Mavic 3 Pro, I don't have the Cine version, but for mine, you can only record in like H.264, H.265, 5K 24. Yeah, there's some cool slow-mo options and stuff, but I mean, in terms of the codecs, you really only have those smaller, less information-dense codecs. And I think that's really important. I know I always talk about this, but those professional productions, you know, those narrative films, those feature films, those really high-end commercials, those political campaigns, they do care about that ProRes 444 XQ. Like that production I got hired on, the reason why I got this Inspire this time around was they wanted me to shoot with the Inspire 2, and they wanted me to record in ProRes 4444 XQ. They didn't even want ProRes 422, like they wanted that raw because they're matching it to Arri Alexa Mini. I wasn't exactly sure what camera they're shooting at, but I saw the little Arri logo. But yeah, that's really important to them because they don't want to have too much of a difference when they're cutting from the main A cam to the drone camera. So that's really important when you want to level up and get these more expensive jobs. So another really, really important difference between the Inspire 2 zenmuse X7 and the Mavic 3 Pro drone is the fact that you have interchangeable lenses on the Inspire 2 platform and the Inspire platform in general. And I think that's absolutely huge. Like sure, we could sit here all day and argue about, okay, yeah, there's not too much of a difference on social media between Mavic 3 Pro, Inspire, yada, yada, yada. But you guys can't argue with the fact that having interchangeable lenses is huge for an aerial cinematographer. Like sure, on the Mavic 3 Pro, you have those 3 different lenses, right? You have the 24, you have the 3X, the 7X, but let's be honest, like when you switch between those 3 different lenses, you do lose image quality switching from that main 1X Hasselblad sensor to the 3X, even the 7X. Like sure, you still have that D-Log M, but personally, whenever I look at the footage from the 2 different lenses on the Mavic 3 Pro, I can tell the difference. Like sure, it's still usable for social media, it's still good, it's still a good lens, you know, the 3X, the 7X, but the Inspire 2 is such an amazing platform because you're able to utilize those DJI DL mount lenses. I had the 60mm, that's a Super 35 lens, but I also had the 24 full frame and the 50 full frame. And it's so amazing being able to change lenses without losing any image quality whatsoever. Like the 50mm looks just as sharp, just as clean as the 24, as the 16, just with that added compression, which is really awesome because basically on the X7, having the 50mm is like basically like a 70mm equivalent, and that's almost exactly like the 3X lens on the Mavic 3 Pro. So it's just that perfect focal length where you get nice compression, good parallax. It's really sharp, really great color rendition. So that's why I find the Inspire 2 is so fun, because as a cinematographer, I feel like one of your biggest assets and biggest tools for creative expression is being able to switch lenses. Like sometimes you want to get that wide, then you want to go medium, then you want to get that tight close-up parallax shots. And that's just so awesome on the Inspire 2, because with each lens, you're not losing any image quality, you're not sacrificing anything, and they all take the same ND filters. I was using the Polar Pro ND polarizer filters, really great to use. And the Inspire 2, of course, has that variable aperture, so it was really easy to dial in my exposure and get the correct exposure I wanted. So that's why the Inspire 2 is so awesome. All right guys, so next we're going to talk about the dual operator ability of the Inspire 2 drone and just the Inspire series in general. I mean, I feel like that's one of the hugest selling points and biggest feature set of the Inspire platform is the fact that you can connect 2 controllers and do dual operator setup. And I think it's absolutely huge. Like, unless you tried it before with a friend, you guys should not discount this. Like, I know you guys are probably gonna say like, oh yeah, I can get the same shots on my Mavic 3 Pro, blah, blah, blah. Like, honestly, I don't care. Like, unless you guys try it, don't say anything in the comments. Don't even think it, because unless you try dual operator, you're definitely missing out as a drone pilot. Because until I tried dual operator, like, I felt like I was living under a rock my whole life. Because as dual operator, like, I know it's a little bit more complicated. You need another friend, you need more gear, you need more peripherals, but honestly, flying dual operator makes your life easier, because knowing myself, like when I'm trying to track cars on Mavic, like sure, you have the vision assist features now, you have really good obstacle avoidance, but when you're tracking cars and like really trying to frame up a very particular subject while you're moving on a Mavic, it is kind of hard, because you literally have to fly the drone the direction you want to be filming. So like if you're tracking a car this way, you literally have to fly the drone sideways, and now you kind of lose your orientation because you have to rely on those kind of vision assist sensors, which aren't great. It's black and white, the resolution is really low. But on the Inspire 2, it's really awesome because you can always be facing the straight the way you want to fly. Obviously, the main FPV camera on the Inspire 2 is pretty crappy, but just visual line of sight, you're able to orient the drone straight, fly straight, and then the gimbal can literally turn a full 360 and point it wherever you want. And me and Griffin tried this on Grizzly Peak, and we were just kind of flying around tracking cars, and it was really easy. Like, I just flew the drone in a perfectly straight line, and Griffin was just completely focused on tracking this little red truck on the road. We also did some shots of a bike, and it was just so much easier to do that. Like, sure, I could accomplish that on the Mavic 3 Pro, but I would have to fly sideways, I would have to look out for trees, I would have to orient myself differently and really maneuver yourself and dance around all these trees and obstacles. It actually makes it a lot harder doing it by yourself, but the dual operator setup makes tracking objects so much easier because I'm just solely focused on flying that nice direct line. I think of it as like just like a simple dolly in the air. Like, my main job is to just fly that drone perfectly safe, perfectly smoothly in just a straight line, and then Griffin can get as complex as he wants. And after looking at the shot looks amazing. Like, it's just so cool because it starts here, tracks the truck through the trees, got amazing foreground, and then at the end he pans up and kind of reveals the hillside and more of the road. So yeah, tracking is just so much easier on dual operator, and I think that's absolutely huge. In addition, since the Inspire 2 has that full 360 gimbal with no obstructions on the bottom, once the landing gear is raised, even when you're doing single operator, it actually makes getting shots easier because, as I mentioned earlier, you don't always have to fly sideways and backwards and really maneuver the Mavic 3 Pro in these weird ways to get the shots. Like with the Inspire 2, even single operator, like you could fly straight, and if you're trying to get a side tracking shot, you literally just kind of take a second, orient the gimbal to the left, and then you could still fly straight and fly regularly in the way you're used to, which I think is really helpful. And that's why I'm so excited for the Inspire 3, because the Inspire 3 has that updated really high definition FPV camera, has a new vision assist sensors. I feel like I'm just gonna have way more spatial awareness and understanding of where I am in space, and I'll be able to fly a lot more safely. Because right now with the Inspire 2, especially since it's not my drone, like I've been really careful with flying it. Like whenever I fly it, I always want to be in direct line of sight. Like I do not want that thing to go out of my sight, because as you guys know, in the Bay Area, there's a ton of seagulls here, and I got a lot of shots by the water, and the last thing you want is to be downed by a seagull or a bird strikes. All right guys, so for this last section of the video, we are going to talk about all of the cons of the Inspire 2 system. And I'm definitely gonna go easy on it because it's a 7-year-old drone, but I feel like it's just a good way to end out the video, because obviously no drone is perfect. and I just want to share with you guys what I personally believe are the downfalls of the Inspire 2 system and what you guys should look out for if you guys start flying Inspire 2 or Inspire 3 drones. All right guys, so first we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the size of the Inspire 2 drone and also the whole kit in general. And obviously the Inspire 2 is a very large drone, and the kit that it comes with is especially large, especially those GPC cases or those Pelican cases. Those things can get really heavy, and there are ways to go around it. For example, if you're gonna go on a hike and you just wanna bring like a few sets of batteries, the remotes, some propellers, you can actually get like a low pro backpack and actually just strap the drone onto the back. And if you do that, it's gonna be really lot lighter. You don't have to deal with that huge Pelican case, which is really heavy. So if you guys are going to do a lot of like mountaineering, hiking, I would strongly suggest going that route. Just get a backpack, strap it on, put all the necessary things you need, have a buddy carry a bunch of batteries, have the gimbal in the bag. Like, you can definitely slim down the setup a lot. But since I am in the Bay Area, I wasn't doing a lot of hiking, I was just kind of driving around to these spots, I decided to just keep it in the case. That was like a GPC case, and that thing was absolutely huge. There's definitely a few cases you can get, but that thing is absolutely huge because you could fit in 2 remotes, you can fit in the gimbal case, you can fit in like 7 sets of batteries, propellers, yeah, just so many different extra peripheries. And I know it's a big case, but actually everything you need is in there for production, and it actually makes it really easy to pack out and go to a job. You don't have to be thinking like, oh crap, what wires do I need? What propellers do I need? What batteries do I need? What lenses do I need? Like, legit, everything is all in that one case. Besides the charging case, like everything is just in those 2 cases. So I think that's really convenient to have. Like, I know it's really big, but if you have a car, just toss it in the car and you're ready to go. So I actually prefer to just work out of the case. Like, sure, I could have separated everything out into my backpack and carry the drone by hand, but it just didn't make sense, especially since I'm just going around the Bay Area right now. But I think that's a huge elephant in the room, the fact of how big this case is. One thing that was really interesting that I learned this past week is the fact that when you're carrying around such a big kit and a big setup, you're actually less likely to have people scrutinize you like Karens or Chads, because since it's such a big drone, like obviously it attracts more attention in general. People look at it, especially when you take off, but for the most part, like no one really kind of confronts you. Like, sure, you might get people interested in the drone, like people that like drones, that might ask you, oh, how much is it? What's that drone called? But from this past week, I didn't have any experience where someone was telling me like, oh, you can't fly here. It's kind of interesting because since it's such a big drone and I had 2 of my friends with me and I have such a huge case, really expensive drone, like people just kind of like subconsciously assume that someone hired you to be here, you're a professional, you're licensed, you have the correct permits, and you're supposed to be there. So that's something really interesting that I found out, that like no one really has the balls to tell you, oh, you can't fly here, because they just assume that you're here for a reason. So that's actually a really cool effect of flying such a big professional drone. One really annoying thing about the Inspire 2 X7 is the horizon sometimes gets off. And I noticed this probably around like the 2nd day I was flying with this thing. Like, I noticed that like I always had to adjust the horizon. It was really annoying. And on the dual operator setup, you can't really map it to just like an easy switch. Like, I really wish I could just map like a dial on the second controller, or even my controller, just to like adjust the horizon real quick. But in order to do that, I would have to use a second dual operator controller, and I would have to sacrifice 1 stick just for roll. And then the second operator would have only just 1 joystick to adjust the pan and tilt. So I decided to just not use that feature, and instead, every time I wanted to adjust the gimbal, I would legit have to jump into the settings, hit the gimbal settings, and then I would have to go to this little menu where I could adjust it like this. And it was annoying because like almost every shot at one point, like before every shot, I have to go in there, dial in my horizon, press done, exit, get the shot done, set up for another one. I just had to keep doing that. And it was actually really annoying, and it was really hindering my workflow process. And it actually kind of worried me that my footage wouldn't be usable. Thankfully, after I checked all the footage, it was relatively easy to fix, even in post. Even if the horizon was a little bit off, I would just kind of crop in a little bit and then adjust. And thankfully, I wouldn't have to zoom in that much. I would maybe be at like a 1.1 times zoom. So I definitely think it's still usable. But one thing that's annoying is the fact that for some shots, those long takes where I would kind of like start wide and do a really huge move, like I would notice that the horizon would be good, but then at the last part of the shot, when I go all the way on this side of the trees or something, the horizon would be off. So it was really annoying. So yeah, for that job, I don't think it's gonna be a problem because you're only gonna be using like a few seconds here and there. But let's say if I was doing like a speed ramp and I want to use like a whole entire shot from start to finish, like I would also have to keyframe in like a horizon adjustment. So that was really annoying. Some people online said to do like an IMU calibration. I tried that, I did a gimbal calibration, nothing really seemed to help. I think that's just kind of one of the cons of the Inspire 2, just really starting to show its age, and maybe it's just a bad unit, but that's a really annoying thing about the Inspire 2 X7 setup. Alright guys, so in conclusion, you guys might be wondering, why am I making all these videos about an Inspire 2? I mean, this drone is like 7 years old now, and there's already Inspire 3 out. There's all these other more modern drones to talk about. Why am I still talking about this drone? And honestly, I think the Inspire 2 is a really important drone for me and my career, because I'm probably like many of you guys. I started off with just this cheap small drones, the Mavic 3s, the Air 3s, and the Inspire 2 has really been kind of like this really cool journey for me to level up as a pilot and really starting to become more mature and really level up in my career. And obviously not many of my jobs right now are Inspire, but I've definitely noticed that after I started doing these Inspire gigs, like people are starting to recognize me as kind of like a more professional, more of a top tier pilot, because I'm not sure about your guys' markets, but there's so many people that fly Mavic 3s and Air 3s and Mini 3s and advertise their services as Part 107 pilots, and they pick up all of the cheap real estate work, and they do all of the wedding gigs, and they do all those like cheap like $300 corporate gigs. But after kind of establishing myself as an Inspire pilot and just getting more hours into the drone, making more videos about it, learning more about it, doing more dual operator, posting more show reels with Inspire 2, like I definitely noticed like people are starting to take me more seriously. I've been getting more business leads. More people are contacting me to do these more upper tier commercial gigs, these more serious narrative projects. I've been doing more political campaigns lately, and it's just really awesome. It's a really great feeling. And I think it's such an important drone to me because you guys know me, I've been really trying to save up for the Inspire 3 for a while. I know I've been talking it for a long time. I've just been kind of figuring out some kind of logistical issues right now, but I think it's so important to really kind of train yourself on the older drones before you just jump into the Inspire 3. Like for any regular pilot asking me if they should get Inspire 3, I would say no. Like even if you could afford it, like unless you have experience on the Inspire 2, I would say no, because you might crash that thing and it's gonna really kill you because that thing's freaking expensive. And sure, I might crash the Inspire 3 too, who knows? But like after making so many videos, getting so many more hours, trying to get to know the Inspire 2 so much better these past few months, this past year, it makes me really confident and really kind of feel ready for the Inspire 3. Like it doesn't feel like it's gonna be a huge jump when that drone arrives, because it's basically an Inspire 2, just way more refined, more reliable, way better image transmission, better safety features, better image quality. Like I'm not really gonna feel like it's a huge big deal because I've already had so many hours on Inspire 2. I feel so confident. I've had so many successful missions on Inspire 2. Like it's not really gonna be a big deal. And I would strongly recommend that to anyone out there. Like if you guys are really serious about this drone stuff, yeah, go rent Inspire 2s from people. Like I'm sure people would rent them for relatively cheap now, you know? Like I wouldn't recommend buying one because they're so outdated now. I would definitely save that money for like Inspire 3 or maybe FPV drones or stuff like that, or more modern drones. Definitely wouldn't buy it, but definitely try to rent it from people, borrow it from people in your area, get some more hours on it, because it's really gonna help you level up as a drone pilot. So I feel like it's definitely made me level up as a pilot. I don't know how many times I could say that, but that's kind of like the main theme of this video. You guys know my channel. It's not really so much about gear, technical review stuff. It's mainly about my career, my journey, the footage I'm getting, me as an artist, me as a drone pilot. So really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, hit me up on Instagram, Lucy's in Visuals. Super chill guy. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the very end, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.